Hey, and welcome to the Michael Cohen Show. Thanks to all of you. We have now done over 100,000 subscribers as we're now on our new journey to 250,000 with a whopping 3 million views. Right now, I want to talk about that Biden came out with an op-ed in the Washington Post. Brilliant op-ed. And I want to break it down for you. It involves many different aspects, including the Supreme Court, and it includes things such as what a president should and should not be able to do. So let's go to the first clip on this, and then you're going to get my full reaction. So Joe Biden in the document writes, I have overseen more Supreme Court nominations as senator, vice president, and president than anyone living today. I have great respect for our institutions and the separation of powers. What is happening now is not normal, and it undermines the public's confidence in the court's decisions, including those impacting personal freedoms. We now stand in a breach. He then goes on to say, first, I am calling for a constitutional amendment called the No One is Above the Law Amendment. So before I keep reading, what I want to turn around and say, this is exactly what we've been talking about when it comes to Donald. No one is above the law. Let's go back to the clip and finish it. It would make clear that there is no immunity for crimes a former president committed while in office. I mean, doesn't that make sense? I share our founders' belief that the president's power is limited, not absolute. We are a nation of laws, not of kings or dictators. I mean, how many times are we going to hear from Donald? How many times are we going to turn and hear that he wants to rewrite the Constitution, that he wants to be a dictator on day one, that the guy wants to destroy our tripartite system of government, conferring the power that the legislative branch and the judiciary has over to the executive branch, of course, if he is the chief executive, making him into a king. One of the things that, of course, sparked all of this is the Supreme Court's recent decision on presidential immunity. Now, one of the big problems that Joe Biden is trying to introduce here is also the fact that most Americans, a substantial amount of Americans have lost faith not just in our judicial system, our Department of Justice, but most importantly, our Supreme Court of the United States, where they don't believe that the decisions coming down anymore are impartial. Look, I have a case myself, which we have just filed a writ of certiorari on, and that is the unconstitutional remand of me back to Otisville, back to federal institution Otisville, because that's what Donald wanted. And because of the Dobbs decision, not only did that overturn Roe v. Wade, but it also overturned a case called Bivens. The reason I bring this up, this is what is so important. This is what we as American citizens have to be concerned of, that there is a president who is more consumed with his own retribution and his own vindication than he is about the American people or the Constitution. So let's go further, because one of the other things that we know is that there are Supreme Court justices that have been doing things that are completely improper. So he also turns around and says, and this is Joe Biden's op-ed, second, we have had term limits for presidents for nearly 75 years. We should have the same for Supreme Court justices. My God, I have been calling for this forever. The United States is the only major constitutional democracy that gives lifetime seats to its high court. By the way, they should also throw in the district courts, and they should also throw in federal courts. Term limits would help ensure that the court's membership changes with some regularity, and that would make timing for court nominations more predictable and less arbitrary. It would reduce the chance that any single presidency radically alters the makeup of the court for generations to come, something that we saw that Donald Trump did. And I support a system in which the president would appoint a justice every 2 years to spend 18 years in active service on the Supreme Court. Now, one of the reasons that this is very interesting, spending 18 years. Now, other than Donald Trump, most of the Supreme Court justices are not 50, 55 years old. And at 55 years old with an 18-year term, you're talking about 74 years old, 73 years old, depending upon when their birthdays fall out, right? This is not, at 73, that's like middle age. It's like the younger part of the Supreme Court prior to Donald Trump and, of course, Joe Biden's appointment of Ketanji Brown Jackson. One of the things that we saw, including what ended up happening with Ruth Bader Ginsburg, is she just didn't want to retire. And at that point, that nomination would have gone to President Barack Obama, and we would not be in the mess that we're in. So somebody with the amazing, incredible, amazing legacy of Ruth Bader Ginsburg is marred by the fact that she just refused to step down, and there's nothing that you could do. On top of all of that, the reason why the Supreme Court is right now not trusted by Americans is simply because we're seeing things like what Judge Alito or Judge Clarence Thomas have done, where they're taking money from mega billionaires for their own benefit. I mean, who knew that the Supreme Court was for sale with high-priced vacations and yachts and a mortgage on a house? I mean, this is not normal. For example, with Clarence Thomas, you have when Harlan Crow, who basically paid off a mortgage and has given him like $10 million in trips, and Harlan Crow is actually before the Supreme Court. That has now sparked something else for President Biden. I mean, think about what he's doing right now. This is unprecedented, but it is so necessary. One of the things that he's doing is he's calling for a binding code of conduct for the Supreme Court. Whoever knew that the Supreme Court didn't even have a binding code of conduct? I mean, this is common sense. Yes, it is, Mr. President. It is common sense. The court's current voluntary ethics code is weak and self-enforced, meaning there's nobody that's enforcing it. Justices should be required to disclose gifts, refrain from public political activity, and recuse themselves from cases in which they or their spouses have financial or other conflicts of interest. Every other federal judge is bound by an enforceable code of conduct, and there's no reason for the Supreme Court to be exempt. Well, no shit. I mean, whoever knew? To be honest with you, I didn't know that there was no code of conduct for the Supreme Court. And I've been practicing law since 91, and I've actually read the Constitution and studied the Constitution, both in law school, in college, and even in high school. I didn't know this. And the fact that we even have to then put something forth to say that it is not right for a Supreme Court justice to be palling around with somebody who is before them and expect that the decision that's being made is in the best interest of the American people and not in the best interest of your pal. And that's why right now, Americans don't have faith in our Justice Department. They don't have faith, certainly, in our Supreme Court. And to be honest with you, neither do I. I have seen what the federal courts have done. I have watched as groups like the Southern District of New York, who also don't really have a specific code. They believe themselves to be the sovereign district of New York. None of this should happen. They are all there to enforce the law blindly and equally to all. And that's why I commend once again President Biden for taking this unprecedented stand. And it's why I turn around and I say that a Donald Trump presidency would be possibly the worst thing that this country could do for its democracy. And I will finish this as I do with all of these episodes. Kamala Harris 2024. Hey everyone. First of all, thanks for watching. I mean, we're going to be posting daily episodes with reactions and talking about politics. We'll be talking about everything, in fact. So please like and subscribe. Join us on this journey.